The grand chamber of the Galactic Council looked like a storm had arrived. Representatives from 40 different species filled the curved seats that rose in layers around the central speaking floor. Their voices crashed against each other like waves, growing louder with each passing moment. No one could agree on anything. No one wanted to listen. Ambassador Threx of the Thorian Empire slammed his 4 massive fists on his desk. His red scales flashed with anger. "The Vrax must be stopped! They have taken 3 colony worlds in the past year. When will you all open your eyes?" Across the chamber, Scholar Ven of the Zelhari Collective raised one of her 6 slender arms. Her silver skin glowed softly as she spoke in her usual measured tone. "Violence serves no purpose, Ambassador Threx. We must consider diplomatic solutions. War benefits no one." A chorus of squeaks erupted from the Quib delegation. The small, furry merchants bounced in their seats with excitement. "Think of the trade routes. Think of the economic damage. We must protect the shipping lanes." The shouting continued. It had been going on for 3 hours now. 3 hours of accusations and arguments and speeches that went nowhere. The Vrax Empire had been expanding their territory for months. They took systems that belonged to smaller, weaker species. They built military stations on the borders of Council space. And now their representative stood in the center of the chamber with an ultimatum. General Cax of the Vrax Empire was a towering figure. His thick armor covered gray skin that looked like stone. His eyes were cold and yellow. He waited for the noise to die down, but it did not. So he simply started speaking, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "The Vrax Empire has been patient," General Cax said. His voice was deep and hard. "We have listened to your debates. We have heard your complaints. But words change nothing. The Vrax require territory. We require resources. We will have them." The chamber fell silent for just a moment. Then the shouting began again, even louder than before. "You cannot simply take what you want," Threx roared. "There are laws, protocols," Ven insisted. "Our trade agreements," the Quibs squeaked together. General Cax raised one massive hand. "The Vrax Empire gives you one choice. Surrender the 3 border systems of Kaldor, Menix, and Taluth. Surrender them peacefully, or we will take them by force. You have 10 standard days to decide." The chamber exploded. Species that normally never agreed on anything suddenly found common ground in their outrage. Even the peaceful Zelhari looked angry. Threx stood up to his full height, roaring challenges. The Quib formed a cluster, chattering frantically about economic disaster. In the far corner of the chamber, in the smallest section reserved for the newest council members, Ambassador Minjun of Earth sat perfectly still. He had not moved in over an hour. His dark eyes watched everything, but his face showed nothing. He had not spoken once during the entire session. He had not raised his hand or made any sound. He simply sat and watched. Most of the other species barely remembered he was there. Humans were new to the galaxy. Their ships had only reached Council space 15 years ago. They were primitive compared to species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. They had one small colony world and a tiny fleet. Earth itself was far away in an outer arm of the galaxy. What could humans possibly contribute to this crisis? But Threx noticed. The old warrior had been in combat for 60 years. He had learned to watch for dangers that others missed, and something about the silent human in the corner made him uneasy. He could not explain why. The human was small compared to most species in the room. He wore a simple dark suit instead of armor. He carried no weapons. Yet something about his complete stillness felt wrong. Threx leaned toward his aide, a younger Thorian warrior. "How long has the human been sitting like that?" The aide glanced at Min Jun. "Since the session began, General." "He has not moved. He has not spoken. He does not even take notes." "Strange," Threx muttered. His warrior instincts were screaming at him, but he did not know why. The Zelhari scholar Ven had noticed too. She prided herself on observing everything. The human ambassador had attended 12 council sessions now. He had spoken at exactly none of them. He just sat in his corner, watching. What was he watching for? What was he thinking? The Zelhari valued knowledge above all else, and the unknown troubled them. Even the Quib had started to notice. One of the merchants whispered to another, "Why does the human never speak? Is he even awake?" "Maybe humans are just stupid," the other Quib replied, but neither of them sounded convinced. General Cax finished his ultimatum and left the central floor. The council head, an elderly being called Administrator Pell, tried to restore order. It took 20 minutes. When the chamber finally grew quiet enough, Pell spoke in a tired voice. "We will take a recess. All ambassadors will return in 2 hours. We must form a response to the Vrak's ultimatum." Dismissed. The chamber began to empty. Species gathered in small groups, talking urgently, planning, worrying. The Thorians discussed military options. The Zelhari debated diplomatic approaches. The Quib calculated economic impacts. Minjun stood up slowly. He was of medium height for a human, which made him shorter than most species present. His black hair was neat. His face was calm. He picked up a small data pad from his desk, though he had not looked at it once during the session. Then he walked toward the exit with steady, unhurried steps. As he passed the Thorian delegation, several warriors stepped aside. They did not know why. Something in their old combat instincts told them to move. Threx watched the human walk by, and the feeling of unease grew stronger. Ven watched too. Her analytical mind raced. Humans were new. Humans were weak. Humans had almost nothing to offer the council. So why did the human ambassador look so calm? Why did he seem so patient? What did he know that they did not? Minjun reached the door and stopped. He turned slightly, looking back at the chamber one time. His dark eyes swept across the room, taking in everything. Then he left without a word. Behind him, whispers spread through the remaining delegates like fire through dry grass. The most powerful species in the galaxy had just spent 3 hours shouting at each other. And the entire time, the human had said nothing. He had simply watched and listened. And somehow that silence felt more dangerous than any threat General Cax had made. The recess chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Delegates gathered in small groups, sharing information and concerns. But one topic kept rising above all others: the human. The silent human who never spoke. Scholar Ven stood with 3 other Zelhari researchers. They had pulled up every record they could find about human participation in council matters. The results troubled them. "Look at this," Ven said, projecting a holographic report. 6 months ago, the trade dispute between the Miliks and the Hendari. It lasted for weeks. The human observer attended every session. He said nothing. Then on the final day, he spoke for exactly 4 minutes. He identified a legal clause that both sides had missed. The dispute ended within an hour. One of her colleagues pulled up another file. The Quelon piracy crisis. Human security advisor attended all briefings. Never spoke. Then he wrote a 2-page report that revealed the pirates' base location, supply routes, and the corrupt officials helping them. Everything he wrote was correct. The mining rights negotiation on Fel Prime, another researcher added. Human representative sat silent for 9 days. Then she spoke for 7 minutes. She had calculated resource distribution formulas that satisfied all 5 claimant species. The formulas were mathematically perfect. Ven's silver skin flickered with unease. There is a pattern. Humans observe. They say nothing. Then they speak once and change everything. But how? What do they see that we do not? Across the chamber, Ambassador Threx was having a similar conversation with his military advisors. One young warrior had served on a joint tactical committee that included a human officer. Tell me again, Threx ordered. The young warrior shifted uncomfortably. It was during the Border Patrol planning, General. The human tactical officer, Commander Park, attended every meeting for 2 weeks. We Thorians gave our input. The Zentari gave theirs. The Quillen presented their plans. The human said nothing. We thought he was useless. And then? Threx pressed. On the last day, he finally spoke. He pointed out that all our patrol routes had a gap, a small gap in the timing where no ships would be in Sector 7 for 18 minutes. He showed us how pirates could exploit it. We had spent 2 weeks planning, and none of us saw it. The humans saw it by just watching. Another warrior added his experience. I was at the Supply Logistics Conference. Human Quartermaster attended, silent for days. Then she told us our supply chain would fail on day 14 of any extended campaign. She was right. She had noticed something about the temperature requirements for our rations that we had overlooked. Threx's scales darkened with thought. He was a warrior. He understood combat, but this was something different. This was a kind of warfare he did not fully understand. The warfare of patience and observation. In another corner, the Quib merchants were equally disturbed. Their entire culture was built on communication, negotiation, and constant chatter. Silence made them nervous. And humans seemed to embrace silence like it was a weapon. Remember the human accountant? One Quib said, his whiskers twitching. The one reviewing the Galactic Bank restructuring? Do not remind me, another Quib replied. He sat in that office for 3 weeks, just reading files, never asked questions. We thought he was slow. Then he found the embezzlement scheme. 17 billion credits stolen over 9 years, and he found it just by being quiet and reading carefully. Humans are strange, a third Quib added. They do not think like us. They do not talk like us. They just watch and watch and watch. It is unnatural. The stories spread. Every species had an experience with a silent human who changed everything with just a few words. The pattern was always the same. Humans attended meetings. Humans observed. Humans said nothing. Then, when everyone else had finished talking, humans spoke. And when they spoke, they revealed things that no one else had noticed. Ven decided to investigate further. She accessed the human cultural database that Earth had provided when joining the Council. What she found made her even more concerned. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters on their homeworld. They did not chase prey with speed. They tracked it for days, watching for patterns. They studied behavior. They waited for the right moment. Patience was built into their very nature. Human societies had developed complex social structures. They learned to read facial expressions, body language, and vocal tones. They could detect lies and emotions that other species missed. They survived by observing their environment carefully. Human history was full of quiet thinkers who changed everything. Scientists who watched experiments for years before making discoveries. Strategists who studied their enemies before striking. Leaders who listened more than they spoke. They are pattern recognition specialists, Ven said quietly to her colleagues. Their brains are designed to see connections. They watch social interactions like we read data. They notice small details because their survival once depended on it. Should we fear them? One colleague asked. Ven considered the question carefully. I do not know, but we should respect them. A species that values observation over action, silence over speech, has learned something that we have not. Back in the main council chamber, Administrator Pell was reviewing reports with his staff. He was old, even for his long-lived species. He had seen many civilizations rise and fall, and he recognized something in the humans that worried him. They remind me of the Kethics, Pell said quietly. His aide looked surprised. The Kethics were extinct before the council even formed, Administrator. They died out 12,000 years ago. Yes, Pell agreed, but the old records say they were observers too. They watched other species make mistakes. They learned from those mistakes. They built a civilization that lasted for 50,000 years because they knew when to act and when to wait. You think humans are like them? I think humans understand something we have forgotten. Pell said, "We fill our days with words and actions. We believe that doing something is always better than doing nothing. But the humans know that sometimes the wisest action is patience." The 2-hour recess was almost over. Delegates began returning to the chamber. The Thorians looked determined. The Zelhari looked thoughtful. The Quib looked nervous. Everyone had spent the break researching humans, asking questions, and trying to understand what made them so different. They had learned one important thing. Humans did not stay silent because they had nothing to say. They stayed silent because they were seeing everything, processing everything, understanding everything. And when they finally spoke, they would reveal truths that everyone else had missed. The question now was, what had Ambassador Min Jun noticed during 3 hours of chaos? What patterns had he seen? What connections had his human mind made while the rest of them were shouting? The delegates took their seats. The chamber grew quiet. Administrator Pell struck the ceremonial chime to signal the session's resumption. All eyes turned to the center floor, where the response to the Vrax ultimatum would be debated. But many eyes also turned to the corner, to the small human sitting perfectly still, to Ambassador Min Jun, who had watched everything and said nothing. The silence from that corner suddenly felt very loud, very heavy, very dangerous, because everyone in the chamber now understood something they had not understood before. The most powerful person in any room was not always the one who spoke the most. Sometimes it was the one who listened best, and humans had turned listening into an art form that the rest of the galaxy was only beginning to understand. The question was not whether Min Jun would speak. The question was, what would he say when he finally did? The council chamber was tense. Every species had prepared their response to the Vrax ultimatum. The Thorians wanted war. The Zelhari wanted more negotiations. The Quib wanted economic sanctions. Each group was ready to argue for hours. Administrator Pell looked tired. He had seen this pattern before. Everyone would shout. No one would listen. They would reach no decision, and the Vrax would take what they wanted by force. But before the debates could begin, Pell did something unusual. He looked directly at the corner where Min Jun sat. The human had not moved. He looked the same as he had 3 hours ago. Calm, patient, watching. "Ambassador Min Jun of Earth," Pell said clearly, "you have attended many sessions. You have heard much, but you have said nothing. Before we begin our debates, I would like to hear the human perspective. Will you speak?" The chamber went completely silent. Every eye turned to the corner. Some species looked curious. Some looked nervous. Threx leaned forward in his seat, his warrior instincts fully alert. Min Jun stood slowly. He was not tall. He was not physically impressive. But as he walked to the center floor, something changed in the room. The energy shifted. Even General Cax of the Vrax Empire stopped his casual stance and paid attention. Min Jun reached the center. He turned in a slow circle, looking at each delegation. His dark eyes were calm but sharp. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, not weak, but controlled. Everyone had to lean in slightly to hear him clearly. "I have been silent because I was learning," Min Jun began. "My species learned long ago that the first one to speak is rarely the most informed. So we watch, we listen, we learn, and then when we understand, we speak." He paused. No one interrupted. The silence felt heavy. "I have watched General Cax very carefully," Min Jun continued. "I have watched how he stands, how he speaks, how he breathes, and I have noticed something that I believe everyone else has missed." General Cax's yellow eyes narrowed. "What could you possibly notice, human? I have stated the Vrax position clearly." You have, Minjun agreed. But your words say one thing. Your body says another. You stand like a warrior, yes, but not a confident one. You speak with strength, but there is desperation underneath. Your hands clench when you mention the three systems, not with desire for conquest. With need. The chamber stirred. Several delegates looked at each other with confusion. Minjun continued without rushing. So I asked myself, why would the Vrax Empire, which has been stable for 800 years, suddenly become aggressive? Why now? Why these specific systems? Minjun pulled out his data pad. During this session, I was not taking notes. I was researching. The three systems you demand, Kaldor, Menix, and Talauth, have something in common. They are all habitable, not resource-rich, not strategically important, just habitable. He projected a star map into the center of the room. The Vrax home system glowed red. Then I looked at your home system, and I found something interesting in the public astronomical data. The map zoomed in. Your sun, it is dying, not quickly, but faster than it should. Your scientists must have discovered this. Your sun will become unstable in approximately 60 years, maybe less. The chamber erupted in whispers. General Cax's stone-like face showed a crack of emotion, shock, then anger, then something else, sadness. The Vrax Empire has 70 billion citizens across 5 worlds in your home system, Minjun said quietly. You need to evacuate them, but you cannot tell the galaxy you are weak. You cannot admit your home is dying. So you act strong. You make threats. You take systems by force, because you believe that showing weakness will make other species prey on you. Minjun turned to face General Cax directly. I am correct, yes? For a long moment, General Cax said nothing. His massive frame seemed to shrink slightly. Then he spoke, and his voice was different, quieter, tired. How did you know? The general asked. Our astronomers only discovered this 3 years ago. We have shared the information with no one. We classified it at the highest level. I did not know, Minjun admitted. I observed. I considered possibilities. I thought about what would make a stable empire suddenly desperate. A dying sun is one of the few things that could do that. Everything else in your behavior confirmed it. Ven stood up, her silver skin glowing with excitement and concern. If this is true, then the entire situation changes. This is not aggression. This is survival. Threx stood as well. But the Vrax still threaten war. They still demand systems that are not theirs. Because we are desperate, General Cax said. The admission seemed to cost him greatly. Our people will die if we do nothing. We have 60 years. We need worlds. We need them now. We asked quietly at first. We were refused. We offered payment. We were refused. So we decided to take what we need. What choice did we have? Minjun looked around the chamber. You all had a choice, but you did not see it because you were too busy shouting. Let me offer a different solution. He expanded the star map. Several systems glowed blue. There are 18 uninhabited systems within Council space that have habitable planets. Not perfect, but suitable for colonization with standard terraforming. I propose that we offer 3 of these systems to the Vrax Empire, freely, as a humanitarian gesture. Give them systems? One of the quibs squeaked. For nothing? Not for nothing, Minjun replied. In exchange, the Vrax will share their advanced shielding technology. They will provide military support to Council borders, and they will work with us to develop new terraforming methods that can help other species in the future. He turned back to General Cax. Your people are in danger. We understand that. We humans know what it means to face extinction. Our own planet almost died several times before we reached the stars. We learned that survival is better achieved through cooperation than conquest. Minjun's voice grew softer but more intense. But there is one more thing. Your son can be saved. It will be difficult. It will be expensive. But we humans have been studying star mechanics. We believe that with the right technology and enough resources, we can stabilize your sun. It will take decades. It may not work, but it is possible. The chamber was completely silent now. Not the silence of anger or confusion, the silence of hope. General Cax stared at the human. You would help us save our home? After we threatened you? After we made demands? Yes, Min-Jun said simply. Because helping you costs us less than fighting you. Because saving 70 billion lives is the right thing to do. And because we humans believe that today's enemy can become tomorrow's friend if both sides choose wisdom over pride. Administrator Pell stood slowly. His old eyes were bright. Ambassador Min-Jun, in 6 minutes, you have accomplished what we could not do in 3 hours. You saw the truth. You found the solution. You offered hope instead of conflict. I simply watched and listened, Min-Jun said. My species has learned that most conflicts come from misunderstanding, from fear, from not seeing the full picture. You were all focused on what General Cax said. I focused on why he said it. Ven stepped forward. This is remarkable. You observed behavioral patterns, analyzed astronomical data, and constructed a hypothesis that explains everything. And you did all of this while we were arguing. I had 3 hours, Min-Jun replied with a slight smile. Plenty of time to think. Threx laughed. It was a booming sound that filled the chamber. The human sat silent in his corner. We thought he was weak. We thought he had nothing to offer. And all along, he was solving the problem we could not see. Min-Jun returned to face General Cax. Do you accept? 3 habitable systems now. Help with your son over time. Peace instead of war. Cooperation instead of conquest. General Cax was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he knelt. It was a Vrax gesture of deep respect, rarely shown to outsiders. I accept. On behalf of the Vrax Empire, I accept. You have given my people hope when we had none. You have shown us kindness when we showed only threats. We will not forget this. The chamber erupted in discussion, but this time it was different. It was excited, hopeful. Species that had been preparing for war were now talking about cooperation, about saving an entire civilization. Min-Jun walked back to his corner. He sat down quietly. He had spoken for exactly 6 minutes, and in those 6 minutes, he had changed everything. Ven watched him go. She finally understood. Humans did not stay silent because they were weak. They stayed silent because they were patient, because they understood that the best solutions came from careful thought, not quick reactions. The most dreaded being in the room was not the warrior with the loudest voice. It was the quiet observer in the corner who saw everything, understood everything, and spoke only when silence had revealed the truth. 3 weeks had passed since Min-Jun's speech changed everything. The council had voted to approve the humanitarian mission for the Vrax Empire. Now came the difficult work of making it happen. Someone needed to coordinate the relocation, manage the negotiations, and keep all parties working together. Administrator Pell had assigned Ambassador Min-Jun to lead the project, and Min-Jun had requested an assistant, a young Zelhari intern named Kira. Kira had been terrified when she received the assignment. Like most species in the galaxy, she had grown afraid of silent humans. She had heard all the stories. Humans who said nothing and saw everything. Humans who could detect lies and read minds. Humans who turned patience into a weapon. She reported to Min-Jun's office with her hands shaking. The room was small and simple. Min-Jun sat at a plain desk reading a datapad. He looked up when she entered and smiled. "Intern Kira," he said warmly. "Thank you for accepting this position. Please sit." Kira sat carefully. Her silver skin flickered with nervous energy. Min-jun noticed immediately. "You are afraid of me," he observed. It was not a question. Kira's training told her to deny it, to be polite. But something about Min-jun's calm eyes made her tell the truth. "Yes, Ambassador, you and other humans, you are all so quiet, so watchful. It is unsettling." Min-jun nodded. "I understand. Our silence makes other species uncomfortable. Would you like to know why we are silent?" "Yes, please," Kira said eagerly. The Zelhari valued knowledge above all else. Min-jun put down his datapad. "My species comes from a world that was very dangerous. We were not the strongest. We were not the fastest. We survived because we learned to watch, to listen, to understand our environment before acting." He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the council station bustled with activity, hundreds of species going about their business. "Look at them," Min-jun said. "What do you see?" Kira looked. "I see delegates, ships, workers, the normal activity of the station." "Look closer," Min-jun encouraged. "Do not just see, observe." Kira tried. She watched for several minutes. I am not sure what I should be looking for." "That is the point," Min-jun said gently. "You are looking for something specific. But observation means seeing everything without deciding what is important first. Let me show you." He pointed to a group of quib merchants near a docking port. "Those 3 quib, what do you notice?" "They are talking," Kira said. "Probably about trade." "Yes, but 2 of them keep looking at the 3rd one nervously. Their whiskers twitch in a pattern that suggests anxiety. The 3rd one is calm, too calm. I would guess that the 3rd one is in charge and the other 2 are worried about something. Perhaps a deal went wrong. Perhaps they lost money. The body language tells the story." Kira stared. She had not noticed any of that. "How do you see so much?" "Practice," Min-jun replied, "and patience. I do not rush to conclusions. I watch until the pattern becomes clear. Humans learn this from childhood on Earth." He returned to his desk. "Let me tell you about my grandfather. When I was young, he would take me fishing. We would sit by the river for hours, just sitting. I hated it at first. I wanted to talk. I wanted to move. But my grandfather would say the same thing every time. 'Be still. Watch the water. The fish will tell you where they are if you pay attention.'" Kira's skin glowed with interest. "Did it work?" "Always," Min-jun said with a smile. "I learned to see the small ripples, the shadows, the way plants moved when fish passed. I learned that nature speaks constantly. We just have to be quiet enough to hear it. Later, I realized that people are the same. They speak with their words, yes, but also with their faces, their movements, their choices. If you watch patiently, people tell you the truth even when they try to hide it." Kira thought about this. It was so different from Zelhari culture. Her people loved to analyze and debate. They talked through every problem. Silence meant you had nothing to contribute. "Is this why you did not speak during the Vrax crisis?" she asked. "Partly," Min-jun agreed. "I knew that everyone else would speak first. They would present their ideas, their biases, their fears. I could learn more by listening to them than by adding my voice to the noise. And I could watch General Cax. His body language told me things his words never would have." Over the following weeks, Kira worked closely with Min-jun on the Vrax relocation project. She watched how he operated. It was remarkable. In meetings, Min-jun rarely spoke first. He would sit quietly while others argued. Kira noticed that he observed everything. Who spoke the most? Who stayed silent? Who agreed with whom? Who seemed uncomfortable? He treated every meeting like a puzzle to solve. When disputes arose between different species about the relocation details, Min-jun would ask questions instead of giving answers. "What concerns you most about this plan?" Or, "Help me understand your perspective." He let people talk, and as they talked, he listened. One day, two groups were arguing about which Vrax population should be moved first. The debate had lasted for hours. Everyone was frustrated. Min-jun had said nothing. Finally, he spoke. I noticed that both groups are arguing about efficiency and fairness, but no one has mentioned that Group A includes the Virax agricultural specialists and Group B includes their industrial workers. If we move Group A first, they can start food production on the new worlds. When Group B arrives, there will already be food systems in place. Both groups benefit. The room fell silent. It was so obvious once he said it, but no one else had noticed because they were too busy arguing. Kira was amazed. How did you see that? We were all looking at the same data. You were looking at the data, Min-jun explained later. I was watching the people. I noticed that the agricultural representative kept mentioning growing seasons. The industrial representative kept talking about infrastructure. Neither was listening to the other. The solution was in combining their concerns, not choosing between them. As time passed, Kira began to change her approach. In meetings, she started to speak less and observe more. She noticed things she had never seen before. The small tensions between delegates, the unstated concerns, the body language that contradicted the words. One day, she had to negotiate with a Thorian captain about ship assignments. The captain was loud and aggressive. The old Kira would have tried to match his energy. Instead, she stayed calm. She let him talk. She watched. After 10 minutes, the captain paused. You are very quiet. Are you listening? I am, Kira said. Please continue. The captain looked surprised. Then he kept talking. Eventually, Kira noticed he kept returning to one concern, the safety of his crew. Everything else was just noise, so she addressed that concern directly. Captain, I understand that crew safety is your priority. These assignments place your ships in protected zones with council escort. Your crew will be safer than they are now. The captain's aggressive posture softened immediately. If you can guarantee that, I can, Kira assured him. And just like that, the negotiation was complete. She reported back to Min-jun excitedly. It worked! He was being difficult, but I just listened. I watched, and I found the real issue beneath all his shouting. Min-jun smiled. Now you understand. The loudest voice in the room is not always the most informed. Often, loud people are just scared, or frustrated, or not sure how to express what they really want. Patience reveals the truth. Kira's respect for human methods grew daily. She saw how Min-jun resolved conflicts by letting people feel heard, how he found creative solutions by noticing details others missed, how his silence was not weakness, but wisdom. One evening, after a successful negotiation, Kira asked him a question. Ambassador, why do you share this with me? This human way of thinking. Is it not an advantage for your species? Min-jun looked thoughtful. Kira, my species learned something important in our history. Knowledge is more valuable when shared. Skills are more powerful when taught. If I keep these methods to myself, I help only humans. But if I teach others, I help the entire galaxy become wiser. And a wiser galaxy is safer for everyone, including humans. He pulled up an image on his data pad. It showed Earth, a blue and green world against black space. We almost destroyed our own planet several times. Wars, pollution, disasters. We survived because eventually we learned to cooperate, to share, to think beyond our own immediate needs. Now we are here, among the stars. We want to help other species avoid the mistakes we made. Kira felt her skin glow warmly. That is a beautiful philosophy. It is a practical one, Min-jun corrected gently. Humans are still learning too. We are not perfect. We make mistakes. But we have learned that patience, observation, and cooperation work better than rushing, assuming, and fighting. By the end of the first month, Kira was a different intern. She moved more carefully, spoke more thoughtfully, observed more constantly. Other Zelhari started noticing. Some asked her what had changed. "I learned to be quiet," she told them. "And in that quiet, I learned to see." The human method was spreading, slowly, one person at a time, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that the silent humans in the corner were not threats to fear. They were teachers to learn from. 6 months after the Vrax crisis, the Galactic Council chamber looked different, not physically. The same curved seats rose in layers around the same central floor, but something about the energy had changed. The Vrax relocation was proceeding ahead of schedule. 3 colony worlds were being settled successfully. The joint project to stabilize the Vrax sun had begun, with scientists from 12 species working together. What could have been a war had become the Council's greatest humanitarian achievement in decades. And quietly, with no official announcement, the Council had adopted something new, a protocol. Before any major decision, there would be an observation period, a time for silence, a time to think before acting. Ambassador Threx had proposed it. The old Thorian warrior had changed more than anyone. He still loved combat, but now he understood that patience was also a warrior's skill. He had started waiting before making tactical decisions, watching enemy patterns before engaging. His battle record had actually improved. Scholar Venn had written 3 research papers on human observation methods. The Zelhari Collective was teaching these techniques to their students. They called it active silence, the ability to learn by not speaking. Even the Quib merchants had adapted. They still chattered constantly, as was their nature, but now they spent time observing their customers before negotiating. Their profits had increased by 18%. The human approach was spreading through the galaxy like seeds on the wind, slowly, naturally, without force. Kira was no longer an intern. After her work on the Vrax project, she had been promoted to junior ambassador. She now sat in her own section of the council chamber. But she visited Minjun's office regularly, still learning from him. Today, the council faced a new crisis. 2 species, the Morlax and the Zentauri, were on the brink of war. A dispute over mining rights in a contested asteroid field had escalated. Both sides had sent military fleets. Both sides were making threats. The council chamber buzzed with the familiar sound of argument. The Morlax representative, a large reptilian being named Commander Srix, shouted about territorial rights. The Zentauri representative, a graceful crystalline being called Lumina, countered with historical claims. Neither side would compromise. The debates had been going for 2 hours. Threx had proposed military intervention to separate the fleets. Venn had suggested binding arbitration. The Quib wanted to auction the mining rights to the highest bidder. Every solution was rejected. Minjun sat in his corner as always, silent, watching. But this time, he was not the only silent one. Across the chamber, Kira sat quietly in her section, observing, taking no notes, just watching the 2 arguing representatives. She had learned well from her human mentor. Threx noticed both of them. He actually smiled. Then he did something remarkable. He stopped his own arguing and simply waited. Venn noticed what Threx was doing. She also went quiet. One by one, other delegates stopped speaking. They had learned. When you have silent humans in the room, wait for them to speak. When you have people trained in human methods, let them observe. Patience reveals answers that shouting never will. Administrator Pell, who had grown fond of the new approach, addressed the chamber. Before we continue, I would like to hear from those who have been observing. Ambassador Kira of the Zelhari Collective. You have been silent. What have you noticed? Kira stood. 6 months ago, she would have been terrified. Now she was calm. She had learned that confidence came from careful observation, not quick speech. I have been watching both representatives, Kira began. Her voice was steady. And I noticed that they are not actually arguing about the asteroid field. They are arguing about respect. Commander Strix turned his large head toward her. Nonsense. This is about valuable minerals. Is it? Kira asked gently. Commander, you have mentioned the minerals 3 times, but you have mentioned how the Centauri ignored your territorial markers 17 times. Ambassador Lumina, you have mentioned the historical claims twice, but you have mentioned how the Morlacks dismissed your diplomatic requests 12 times. The chamber was silent. Kira continued. Both of your species feel disrespected. The asteroid field is just the current battlefield for an older conflict. You both feel that the other side does not take you seriously. Lumina's crystalline form glowed with surprise. That is accurate, actually. Strix's aggressive posture softened slightly. The Centauri have always treated us as inferior, as if our culture means nothing. And the Morlacks act as if history is irrelevant, Lumina added, but her tone was less angry now. As if our ancient claims can simply be ignored. Kira had found the real issue. Now Min Jun stood. He walked to the center floor and stood beside his former student. It was a gesture of support, of pride. May I add one observation? Min Jun asked. Please, Administrator Pell encouraged. Min Jun addressed both representatives. I have been researching your species. The Morlacks have a beautiful tradition of territorial marking, complex ceremonies that establish boundaries. The Centauri have an ancient practice of historical documentation, detailed records that preserve claims across centuries. Both traditions are valuable. Both deserve respect. He pulled up a holographic display. I propose this solution. The asteroid field will be divided equally between your species, but before mining begins, the Morlacks will perform their traditional boundary ceremony, and the Centauri will create a historical record of this agreement to be preserved in your archives. Min Jun looked at both representatives carefully. This way, both species get the resources, but more importantly, both species get the respect they deserve. Your traditions are honored, your dignity is preserved. Commander Strix and Ambassador Lumina looked at each other. Really looked. For the first time, they saw past the anger to the hurt underneath. You truly think our boundary ceremonies are beautiful? Strix asked, his voice uncertain. I do, Min Jun said sincerely. I researched them. They combine mathematics, art, and spirituality. They are remarkable. And you value our historical records? Lumina asked. Your civilization has preserved perfect documentation for 12,000 years, Min Jun replied. That is an incredible achievement. Future generations across the galaxy could learn from your methods. Something shifted. The anger drained from the room. Strix and Lumina approached each other slowly. They did not shake hands or embrace, but they both bowed slightly, a gesture of mutual respect. I accept this proposal, Strix said. As do I, Lumina agreed. And, Commander Strix, I apologize for dismissing your territorial traditions. They are more sophisticated than I understood. I apologize for ignoring your historical claims, Strix replied. Your records are impressive. We should have respected them. Just like that, the crisis was over. A war had been prevented, not through military force or complex negotiations. Through observation, through understanding, through taking the time to see what was really happening beneath the surface. The council erupted in relieved chatter. Threx laughed his booming laugh. Ven's skin glowed with satisfaction. The quib bounced excitedly. As Min Jun and Kira returned to their seats, Administrator Pell spoke into the noise. The council recognizes the effectiveness of our new approach, observation before action, understanding before decision. We thank Ambassador Min Jun of Earth for teaching us this wisdom, and we thank Ambassador Kira for demonstrating that these methods can be learned by any species willing to try. Later, in the quiet of his office, Min Jun met with Kira one last time before she left for her first solo assignment. You will do well, he told her. "You have learned what took my species thousands of years to understand." "What is that?" Kira asked. "That the universe speaks constantly. Stars, planets, animals, people. Everything is communicating all the time, but most beings are too busy talking to hear it. You have learned to listen. That makes you wise beyond your years." Kira's skin glowed warmly. "I will miss these lessons, Ambassador." "The lessons never stop," Minjun said with a smile. "Every conversation is a lesson. Every silence is an opportunity to learn. Remember that, and you will continue to grow." Kira left, heading to her new assignment on a distant station. Minjun watched her go, feeling satisfied. He had not just solved a crisis. He had taught someone to solve future crises. That was the human way. Share knowledge, build understanding. Make the galaxy a little wiser. 3 days later, a new human arrived at the council. Ambassador Jiwoo, fresh from Earth. She was young, nervous, and very quiet. She took her seat in the corner section reserved for human delegates. The veteran ambassadors noticed her immediately. They saw her sit down carefully, saw her open a data pad, then set it aside. Saw her simply watch the ongoing session with calm, patient eyes. Threx leaned toward his aide. "Here we go again," he said, but he was smiling. Ven pulled up her notes on human observation methods. She wanted to watch the new human and see if the patterns held true. The Quib whispered among themselves, excited to see another silent human in action. And Administrator Pell, wise and old, looked at Jiwoo sitting quietly in her corner and felt hope. Hope that the galaxy was finally learning. Finally understanding that wisdom came not from the loudest voice, but from the most patient observer. The council session continued. Species debated a trade proposal. Arguments rose and fell. But everyone was more aware now, more careful. They knew that in the corner someone was watching, learning, understanding, and when the time was right, that quiet observer would speak, and when she spoke, she would change everything. Because that was what humans did. They sat in corners. They stayed silent. They observed everything. And then, when everyone else had finished talking, they revealed truths that no one else had seen. Minjun watched the new ambassador settle into her role. He remembered his grandfather by the river, teaching patience. He remembered his first council sessions, learning to see what others missed. He remembered Kira's nervousness becoming confidence, and he understood something profound. His species had not come to the galaxy to conquer or to dominate. They had come to teach a simple lesson that the stars had forgotten. Sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to be silent. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is patient observation. Sometimes the most important words are the ones you wait to say. The human in the corner was not the most feared being in the room because of threats or violence. She was feared because in her silence she saw the truth. And truth, spoken at the right moment with careful thought behind it, could change the entire galaxy. That was the human gift. Not technology, not weapons, not even courage, wisdom, and wisdom, Minjun had learned, was best shared in quiet voices after patient observation. He smiled and returned to his own watching. There was always more to learn, always more to see, always more to understand. The galaxy spoke constantly. He just had to stay silent long enough to hear it.